on Skype. Should keep it on speakers for now. The sound is because it's cut. Okay, test 1 2 3 1 2 3. Come on. Test 1 2 1 2. Okay, test 1 2 3 1 2 3. Okay, good. We have audio. Okay, so I have to move a little bit around here. All right, this thing on. Test 1 2 1 2. Okay, test 1 2 3 1 2 3. Okay, good. We have audio. But we don't want dual feedback. Okay, so hi everyone, thanks for tuning in. So today I'm gonna talk about an article which talks about how the global emissions are not going down. So I'm just gonna wait a few minutes for people to join in, and I need to drop the link. Maybe that would be a good idea. I always forget something. Always something missing. All right, so that one is done when Facebook wants it to be done. Yeah, that's like super laggy. What's going on here? All right, okay, so now it's good. So yeah, so today I'm gonna talk about climate change again. So if you have any questions related to climate change, preferably, you can use the YouTube chat. So I have a live chat going here on the side, and I'm trying to keep my eyes on it. Usually it's very quiet, so just by habit I don't really check. But if you have something to say, then feel free to do that. I don't claim to be an expert, but I will do my best to answer the question. Okay, just like maybe half a minute more, and then I'll start. Yeah, looks all right. Yeah, that's good. All right, well, let's get going then. Okay, so 3, 2, 1. Hey everyone, and welcome to Age of Reason. I'm JC, and today I'm gonna cover an article from The Guardian that talks about that emissions, global emissions, are actually not going down. So I think there is kind of a myth out there right now that says that because of COVID-19, there was a massive reduction in emissions, and so now we're good. But that's actually not true at all. Not true at all. So I'm going to talk about why. Before I do that, I just want to quickly plug in my book, Beyond the Obscure. Please get it. It's available on Amazon. If you enjoy reading kind of cool stories and unusual stories, because I'm an independent writer, check it out. Give it a chance. It's a great read, and it's only 100 pages long, so it won't take you that long. So I actually posted this on the last show, but I didn't have the chance to talk about it, and today I will. So this is a climate change, a short timeline, as you can see. So first, we have climate change isn't real, so denial phase. Then, okay, climate change is real, but we're not convinced it's caused by humans. So you hear this argument a lot these days too. and then you have a very short moment of oops, and then, well, I'm not gonna say that because it might get censored on YouTube or something. But you get the picture. This is basically what's happening with a lot of issues in the world today. We deny the problem, we try to avoid responsibility afterwards, but the problem is still going on and happens, and so it hits us like a tornado. And the climate change thing, when it's going to hit us, really, it's going to hit us very quickly. So today I'm going to cover an article from The Guardian, and that's precisely what it talks about. It says atmospheric CO2 levels rise sharply despite COVID-19 lockdowns. So that's what I was saying. We have the lockdowns going on, and people think like, oh, we're good now. We have emissions under control, etc. Not at all. I don't really see where that thinking even comes from. A lot of people are still moving around. Lockdown, I mean, come on. Even in the US, we didn't have a full lockdown, okay? It really depended on state by state and city by city. So in New York, it was one situation, but if you live somewhere in Kansas, it's probably really, really different there. Same in Japan. If you live in the, I mean, I'll give you an even easier example. My parents live in France, a small village, and I have friends who live in Paris. So the rules in Paris, because it's a huge metropolis city, are very, very different from that village. So in that village, very few people wear masks, for example. Maybe 5% of people wear masks. That's all. So the response is very, very different depending on where you are. Carbon dioxide levels in the atmosphere have risen strongly to a new peak this year, despite the impact of the coronavirus. The concentration of CO2 in the atmosphere reached 417 parts per million in May, 2.4 ppm higher than the peak of 414 ppm in 2019, according to the readings from the Mauna Loa Observatory in the US. So despite all of the COVID-19 thing, they're still going up. Without the lockdowns, it said, the rise might have been 2.8 ppm, okay? So yes, there is a tiny like positive effect from the lockdowns, but it's really quite negligible. That's what it says here. The difference was too small to show up against any other factors causing year-to-year fluctuations. People may be surprised to hear that the response to the COVID-19 outbreak hasn't done more to influence CO2 levels. But the buildup of CO2 is like a trash in a landfill. As we keep emitting, it keeps piling up. The crisis has slowed emissions, yes, but not enough to show up perceptibly at Mauna Loa. Daily emissions of carbon dioxide fell an average of about 17% around the world in early April. As lockdowns are eased, however, the fall of emissions for the year as a whole are only going to be between 4 to 7% compared to 2019. So this will not make any appreciable difference to the world's ability to meet the goals of the Paris Agreement and keep the global heating below the threshold of 2 degrees that scientists say is necessary to stave off catastrophic effects. So the thing about the 2 degrees here, I just want to quickly comment on that because it's very important. People say, oh, come on, it's just 2 degrees. It's really not a big deal. We'll be able to survive. We'll be able to get by. Well, I'll give you one simple example to ponder about. Usually, the good temperature for the human body is about 36.5 degrees Celsius. It depends on the country, sometimes 36.6. Anyway, for the simplicity here, let's use 36.5 Celsius. Well, if you have a temperature of 37 degrees Celsius, that means that you're running a fever. So this 0.5 degrees has dramatic ramifications on your health. So this is the same with climate change. These small changes, yes, they are small, but life cannot adjust to these changes, especially not at the rate that we're going on right now. So this is a graph, and you probably saw this graph many times. So this is the carbon dioxide ppm in the atmosphere, and you can see over there, 1960. It kind of goes up and down, really. You know, it's kind of like a seesaw pattern, but it goes up, okay? And that's what you have to remember. It's all going up, and right now we're like way up there. nearly 420 ppm. So why is that? This is because if you look at this graph, around the 50s, right here, the world started, basically the baby boomers took over. Let's make as many babies as we want. And of course, there is emissions associated with every human being on the planet. So you have more people, you have more emissions. Look, that's not rocket science. That's just the way it works. So 1950, we started to have a population boom, and we also had a production boom. And that's why you see this huge, huge, huge sharp rise here after 1950s. And we're still going up very strongly way into 2020. So to curb that, we basically have to consume less. But I'm very pessimistic when it comes to this subject. I really highly doubt that most people are on board with this. So if emissions reductions of 20 to 30% were sustained for 6 months to a year, then the rate of increase of CO2 measured at Mauna Loa would slow, according to scientists. This year's rise is slightly weaker than last year's, but matches the average annual rise for the past decade. And the amount of carbon fluctuates because of El Nino, for example, etc. So if emissions reductions of 20 to 30%, I don't think people can imagine this. It's a huge, huge effort. I just don't see that happening. Sorry. CO2 emissions tend to peak each year in late May, when the impacts of the Northern Hemisphere spring have yet to take effect. So the month's data is compared from year to year. Measurements have been taken continuously since 1958. The latest data comes from Scripps scientists at the University of California, San Diego, and the U.S. National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, the NOAA. That's what it is. Okay, all right. They found that levels of carbon dioxide in the atmosphere first rose above 400 ppm in 2014. The annual rate of growth in emissions has been speeding up, not slowing down. And this is despite all the kind of good news you hear that, hey, we have installed, solar is taking over and wind is taking over. And despite all of this progress, we're still in the shit. In the 1960s, the annual growth averaged about 0.8 ppm, doubling to 1.6 ppm a year in the 1980s and remaining steady at 1.5 ppm in the 1990s. The average then rose to 2 ppm in the 2000s and has risen to further 2.4 ppm during the last decade. So the trend is clear. It's going up. You can deny it all you want. You can debate the science, and we can, in fact, debate the science if you want. You can debate, a fair debate, for example, would be to say, okay, well, look at this number, 2.4 ppm. I don't agree with it. Maybe it's 2.2 ppm. And that's a legit argument we can have if you want. An illegit argument, however, is, okay, this is just not happening and it's a hoax. Look, just get lost then. Get off my page. Don't watch my show, because it's not for you. Environmental campaigners said that the continued rise in emissions showed how urgently a green recovery from COVID-19 crisis was needed. Yes, and I talked about that on the last show. Many governments passed very huge relief packages, like in the US, trillions of dollars were passed. And they didn't go into the right area. I'm sorry, but they went to bailing out the airline industry, for example, some kind of car manufacturers, like the polluters one, of course. I'm not talking about the renewables, because Trump is not a friend of renewables. He waged a war on renewables since he got into office. And that's not just Trump, okay? Look, we always kind of pile all the blame on him, but there are other genius leaders out there who do a lot of harm as well. So just a few months of lower emissions were never likely to make a dent in the hundreds of billion tons of carbon that have built up over a century and a half of burning fossil fuels. And that's true. A lot of people don't understand this, but when the gases go up into the atmosphere, they don't just magically disappear, okay? So they stay in the atmosphere for 20, 30 years. In the case of methane, it's even longer. It can be about 100 years or so. So yes, very dangerous. That's why the drop in emissions caused by the pandemic will remain just a blip, unless governments get serious about building a cleaner, healthier, and safer world. But they will not do that. They will not do that. Trust me, they will just not do that. It depends, of course, on the government you're talking about, and some countries are better than others, but it's just not going to happen on a big scale. We need like really radical change. We need to change many, many governments in the world right now, and it's just not happening. Too slow. So there's a campaigner of Friends of the Earth said, it's clear that climate breakdown isn't a distant idea, it's here right now. And we have to treat it like the emergency that it is. Yes, sure, but a lot of people just don't care. There's a lot of apathy out there right now, and I don't have the answer of how to fight that. I don't know. You have your house on fire, and you basically don't give a shit. I don't know what to tell that person. I don't know how to communicate with that person. So, yeah. And, well, that's it. We go back to this again. So, again, it's very relevant. Thank you for watching today. I hope you found it interesting, and I will see you next time. Bye-bye. All right, so today was very short. You know, it was a short article. I don't always do long articles. Today must have been some kind of record because I'm under 20 minutes. If you have any questions on the topic or climate change in general, please go ahead and ask. So this is in the YouTube chat. If you open that window, it's going to go into YouTube, and so you can use the live chat there. I'm keeping an eye on it right now. Just going to keep it going for a few more minutes, and we're going to stop after that. I'm just going to hide this for now. Q&A session, folks. I know it's not, climate change is really kind of not a topic in fashion at all. Like, a lot of people just tune out, and a lot of the disengaged, they don't understand anything about it. They don't want to talk about it. They don't want to hear about it. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, I'm not a scientist, but I try to explain this in scientific terms, but using very simple language. That's kind of the whole point of the show. So again, if you have any kind of questions, go ahead. I'm just gonna turn this off. No need to burn battery power. Just before I finish, perhaps I have some comments on the article. I think I kind of said it. I said it all. I think where the world is definitely not doing enough, and to basically help things go along, we have to stop consuming so much. But I just don't see that happening anytime soon. A lot of people are very happy to continue eating a lot of red meat. They buy more plastic crap for the house that they don't need, that they already have, and they don't need more, but they still get it. You get your Black Friday sales where people rush into the stores and to get some other DVD player where they already have 2 or 3 at home. That mentality, that's why I'm not optimistic about change. So we'll see. Of course, I hope I'm proven wrong. I definitely hope I'm proven wrong, because otherwise we're in for a very toasty time soon. And just I want to briefly also comment. So I actually measure the temperatures outside. I've been doing that for 4 years. So every day at 1 a.m. I measure the temperature outside. So I noticed that well, in a way, I wanted to check actually what my readings, how they correlate to the scientists' readings. And when they say, like, okay, it was the hottest January on record, hottest February on record, and I look at my temperatures, and it's actually the same. So yeah, you can do these experiments at home. You can measure temperatures in many places in the world, and you'll see the trend. So you can make measurements by yourself. It doesn't it just takes a little bit of effort and a bit of time. Okay, since there are no questions, I'm gonna end it here. So again, thank you for watching. I will see you on Friday. I'm doing another show on Friday, probably climate change again. We'll see. We'll see what I find. So until then, bye bye. Okay. First, I have to click here, I think.